good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Kenneth Harris. I currently work at NASA GOTO Space Flight Center here in Greenbelt, Maryland. And today we're just going to kind of take a step away from the technical side of things. I know GOTO is typically more of a tech conference, more of a more the computer side of things. But me and the team had an idea to step away from that and kind of talk about this field I love of space and space exploration and things of that nature. So about me, I started my journey when I was 16 years old. I started at NASA, and I haven't taken a break from missions at the center since. So 16 until now, and I absolutely love the field, everything I do about it. I worked in roles such as mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, thermal vac, database, things like that, and then finally integration, which has just been an amazing opportunity for me to experience, an amazing opportunity to just see how things have unfolded and how we get into the sphere of exploration. I'm gonna throw out a few project names and things like this throughout the conversation. I don't have slides to show you guys, so I figured we can, like I said, it's really more of a kind of an intimate Q&A. So if you guys have questions for me, please just put them in the Q&A section at the bottom there, and I'll get to them, and we'll go through it in that regard. So funny enough, my journey in terms of jobs and things like that didn't start in the engineering field at all. My first job, I was actually a janitor. I cleaned high school, or I cleaned a high school locally in my area. But that experience was so humbling. It was such a good experience for me to learn work ethic. It was a good experience for me to learn. Surprisingly, I even learned networking skills there. But Mr. Chuck, Miss Jessica, Mr. Calvin, I still remember the names to this day. Helped me to really get my work ethic up, because I wasn't always the best student, I'll say. I ended up actually getting the job because my mom, who was very active in my life, told me to get a summer job. She said, hey, you gotta get a summer job. You can't sit around all summer basically doing nothing. I said, okay. I did not apply for a summer job, and the only thing left was a janitor position open. So I had to take that. And so I took it, and like I said, I learned a ton from that experience. The following summer in 2008, I actually began my first internship at NASA. This came through a coincidence of me working at a spring camp or a spring break camp, where they just had the opportunity to say, hey, you can apply for our high school internship program. I applied, I got in. And so in 2008, I start my first internship at NASA GOTO Space Flight Center, working on a project, working on two projects, but I was working within a radiation lab. At this radiation lab, we had the opportunity to test different components and pathfinders in radiation simulated environments. So there was this huge chamber. There's this huge chamber that took up pretty much the entire basement level of this building. And in that chamber, they would pump in different they would simulate different environments that you would experience in a low Earth orbit, or you would experience in, an L2 Lagrange orbit, or anything like that. We could simulate things like that and basically see how the components of the satellites would react in this condition. The first project to work on was called MMS, which is the magnetospheric multi-scale mission satellite. It's a series of 4 tetrahedral satellites that fly kind of in this pattern to explore a number of things in orbits close to us, as well as far as away. But as the name implies, it studies the magnetosphere of the Earth. And so my work on that worked directly with MMS, and it worked directly with the Mars Curiosity rover. We were able to, and back up, the actual things that we worked on. During this time is when I learned what pathfinders are. And again, for those that don't know what pathfinders are, it's basically in the space industry, they're basically the beta version of a satellite or instrument or component. It's basically like the dummy version we make before we spend a lot more on the actual thing. They can also be used as spares in case something on the project actually breaks. So this is where I really learned what pathfinders are, what pathfinders do, as well as how to work in a lab environment. So I'm kind of trying to, through this story of how I came to work here at NASA full time, I want to be sure that through each step, I kind of show you guys what I learned, what I took away from each summer, or what I took away from each 4-year experience. So within working in the radiation lab, like I said, great experience. I absolutely loved everything about that. And so my first and second internship both had to do with MMS and the Mars Curiosity rover. MMS launched in 2015. I was actually able to attend that launch. It went up in Florida. It was an amazing launch. My first launch I ever watched actually it was the second launch I've ever watched, but 2015 was the first one I watched launch that I actually worked on, which is a surreal experience to just be able to go and see everything go off without a hitch. It's a really cool and fun time. The Mars Curiosity rover launched in 2011. And as you know, it's still on Mars to this day. And we'll be launching another rover at the end of this month, hopefully July 31st, July 30th. One of the two is when, I forget which day, but one of those two is when the next one will go up. So like I said, first and second internship had to do with radiation lab experience, working in the lab, getting my hands quote unquote dirty and things like that, and just learning about the lab environment. And that was just an amazing experience. Following that, like I said, so 2008 was the first, 2009 was the second. Following the second internship in 2009, remember I'm still in high school at this point. My senior year of high school, I actually had the opportunity to go to NASA full time full time quote unquote. It was basically a year-long academic study. So I would go to school for half the day. I took 4 classes, and then the other half of the day I would go to NASA. I had the opportunity to work on a project called GPM, which is a global precipitation measurement satellite. And for this, I worked on the Core Observatory. This satellite is a combined effort between a number of different space agencies around the world. The two key ones noted are NASA and then the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. And GPM is a number of weather satellites that help contribute to the study of precipitation on a global scale. So it helps us monitor rainfall, snowfall, and it does it pretty much worldwide every 3 hours. So all the data that you get as far as, it's going to rain in London today, it's going to rain in Copenhagen, XYZ. It's that data that we get, and that's pushed directly, to the Weather Channel app or whatever app you use. That's typically how you get your data. So GPM was another really, really fun project to work on. In this project, I moved from radiation more to the hands-on approach to thing. And I really think this is where I decided that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. So I went to school for mechanical engineering in 2010. But before that, like I said, I had this year-long internship that allowed me hands-on experience. And we worked on the solar array boom hinges, which is basically the elbow hinge or the elbow joint to how the satellite deploys. So working on deployables was again an eye-opening experience, because I always thought about how is it that you take this satellite that's this huge satellite, fold it up and put it into a rocket and launch it up. So the way they do it are deployable. So you fold it up, that's its stowed configuration, put it in the rocket, send it up, it deploys or opens up into whatever its operational conditions, whatever its operational configuration is. And GPM was my first example of that. And like I said, that was one of my more fun experiences, I'll say. It's actually a cool, well, not a cool story. It's actually a pretty weird story. When I started the internship, he's a really good friend now, but my mentor, Alfonso Stewart, he had a really, really hands-off approach to how he went about trying to teach me these things. So I came to the room one day, he had a set of 7 blocks on his desk. Each block is a different material. So you have wood, you have tungsten, you have, stainless steel, and a number of other ones that I won't get into. And he basically said, okay, which of these blocks do you want to build the elbow hinge out of, and for what reason. And he had me walk through and talk through each one and why I wanted to do it. Essentially, again, I'm in high school. I don't know anything about any of this. So his methodology behind it was simply that he wanted to hear my thought process through things. He wanted me to come up with solutions on my own and then bounce it off of him. That way we can come to a solution, not based on him guiding me anywhere, but just based on him allowing my mind to work in its own regard about what experience I have. And I had such an appreciation for that, that I use it to this day. I love to hear younger engineers and, their opinion on things. I feel like too many times today they're watered down by other older folks in the field that just say, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, XYZ. But, the field of space is such an open space, it's such a global reach that anyone's different experience can contribute to the success of the mission in some way. So for that reason, I appreciate hearing both younger and older engineers' opinions on how to get things done, and don't try to shut them out for that reason. So in that same regard, when I was working with Alfonso and working with these blocks, he in that same situation, while we were picking a separate component to work on, he kind of said, hey, how do you want to work on this component? And then he just walks out the room and just leaves me completely to my thoughts. I have no idea what's going on. I have to use resources like NASA has this library that you can go and use resources. We have a suite of documents and things like that I had to read. So I was pretty much independent, again, independent with 17 at this time, 17, independently trying to design this Pathfinder component for $1 million spacecraft. And I have no idea what I'm doing. So again, I do the whole thing, and I actually designed it out of tungsten, which for anyone who knows anything about metals and materials, tungsten is too heavy to fly. So, a 17-year-old kid building a satellite out of tungsten makes absolutely no sense. But again, it's, it was just part of the experience. It's part of him telling me, hey, this is for this reasons you can't build it this way. For this reasons you can build it this way. It's a great way. And it really contributes to how I think now in my field. It contributes to how I thought through the process in undergraduate and things like that. So again, that was my third experience at NASA working on GPM. That was a full year. At the end of that year, I graduated high school. I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I majored in mechanical engineering. Mechanical engineering was a tough field. It was a tough field for me. But I loved every minute. I didn't say it earlier, but when I was younger in school, I struggled with math, which is weird. You think, oh, you struggle with math, why are you an engineer? Makes no sense. But I struggled with math, and because I gave so much time to studying these mathematical concepts and putting more of my time in that than other subjects, I came to love the subject. I came to have an appreciation for it, and for that reason, as well as a number of other reasons, I decided I wanted to major in engineering. Like I said, that was a great experience. My work on GPM really helped me to understand, the concepts that I was learning in the classroom. I really think those internships early on helped me to see what is the end goal. What's the point of me being in this statistics class? What's the point of me being in this materials class, the engineering class, these physics classes? What is the end goal? What am I working toward? And that really helped me in that regard. As I've said a number of times, difficult courses throughout. And like I said, I don't know if you guys heard that part, but I was still going back and forth to NASA during this time, completely voluntary, just because, you put so much work into these missions that you want to see how they pan out. You want to see, the developments of it. So I was going back completely voluntary. And since the school was in state, it was easy just to commute back and forth. Okay. So we're going to fast forward a few years. So I graduated from high school in 2010, and I was in my undergraduate degree between 2010 and 2014. In 2012, like I said, in 2012, I had a really difficult time with one course specifically, and funny enough, it was a materials course that one of my academic advisors kind of advised me, hey man, I think you should drop out of the engineering program. Just just flat out kind of like that, you should consider doing something else. For any college student, for any student in general that, wanted to pursue this as a career and knew that difficult times would come, it's discouraging to hear things like that. And to kind of put you into my shoes for a second, I did consider dropping out. I looked up different majors that my class I'd already taken would apply to. I looked into a number of different options I had in terms of dropping out of engineering and doing something else. But I'm so thankful for my mentors, my dad, well, both my parents, my mentors, and both my parents, for talking me out of that. And I remember, again, going back to Alfonso, who's the guy that let me design that satellite out of tungsten. I told him, hey man, I told him the whole story of what happened, and I said, hey, he wants me to drop out of the program because I'm having some difficulty. To which Alfonso just replied, so, like, you're having difficulty. It doesn't matter. Like, you'll face different challenges throughout this career. This is just another challenge you have to get over. And, I knew that, but to hear it out loud and to be supported, it was a great thing. So I say to say my mentors have been incredibly helpful to me throughout my career. So again, didn't listen to him, got through the engineering program. And then I went on to get a second engineering degree after I finished my undergraduate degree. So that was again, a great feeling to accomplish that. So we're going to fast forward all the way through my undergraduate degree, still working at GOTO, still did GPM. And this is when I experienced the James Webb Space Telescope for the first time. Those that don't know what the James Webb Space Telescope is, I got to give you the pitch like NASA gives you the pitch. It's essentially a time machine. We have built this machine that can, we built this tennis court size transformer that launches into space, unfolds, and it's an observatory that flies in an L2 orbit, which is 2 million miles from Earth. And we point it into the darkness of space. With the concept behind the telescope is that we'll be able to see light in its first kind of conception. And you won't have, light from other planets, light from the Earth, light from the moon, kind of blocking what you're seeing, and it'll be able to study things a lot better. So I got the opportunity to work on James Webb. That was by far my most treasured memory. I had the opportunity to work as the deputy lead integration engineer for the IEC component, which is basically where the electronics live on the satellite. So James Webb was split into 3 components: OTE, ISM, Space Bus. You think about it, and the 3. It's technically 4 because you got to think of the blankets, but we'll say 3. So I worked on ISM, which is the suite on the very back where the instruments live. If you ever look at a picture of James Webb, I encourage you to look after this. It essentially has the gold mirrors on the very front, and then right on the back, it's like this rectangular box. That box is ISM, and that's where the instruments live, and that's where the electronic components live. So being in the clean room every day, 5 days a week in that full bunny suit, basically preparing for COVID-19 before it was a thing. We were totally ingrained in our work in that environment. And that was really, really fun experience to see how a satellite is built and to be around something that's that huge and that, that revolutionary in terms of exploration. We're hoping next year when it goes up, we'll get a lot of, we're excited for when it goes up next year, and then hopefully in the next year and some change, we'll be able to get some data from it. But that was by far my most treasured experience at NASA, working through that. Once that was completely integrated, I got the chance to travel around the U.S. with it, California, Texas, here home in Maryland, making sure that it was integrated properly, making sure that it kind of went through its phases as necessary. Once that integration process was complete, switched off of James Webb, and then I started to work on JPSS, which is the Joint Polar Satellite System. It is a part of that GPM, that weather satellite suite that I talked about earlier. It helps to monitor natural disasters around the world. So Hurricane Dorian, which was off the coast of the U.S. last year, I believe. I did the Amazon rainforest fires, the Australian wildfires. It monitored all things. It monitored things of that nature. So you can kind of see the trajectory of where it's going. You can save a number of lives through that. And that's what that satellite was really used for. On that satellite, I actually led the database team. So basically, think about it as the brain of the satellite. How you get telemetry, how you get commands up and down. Up to the satellite, how you get telemetry down from the satellite, and working through those different metrics to have the satellite function. So that's currently what I do. What I was doing. I say what I was doing a few weeks ago. I'm currently in transition. I'm proud to say I'm in transition to my 6th satellite mission here at Goddard. And like I said, I'm overly excited for what I'll be doing next. I don't think I can say what I'll be doing next, but I'm over the moon, as they say, with what I'll be able to do next. And I kind of sped up the last part of that story just because I didn't want to cut into our question time at all. But in short, that is my beginning at 16 at NASA, and then working all the way through I'm 28 now, so 12 years at NASA, 6 missions, a number of amazing experiences, a number of amazing projects, and just I like to keep track of how each project is affecting the world in general, because I never did this career just for me. I did it obviously because I'm interested, but now that I'm older and kind of look back, I really want to pour into whoever's next. I want to encourage them to follow the dreams of exploration, to work on these amazing satellites and these amazing missions that help contribute to the world at large, and not just to yourself as an individual, because the world's a lot bigger than you. So yeah, that's my story. And I've loved every minute of being in this field.
Thank you, Kenneth. That was an interesting story. Clap, 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 without saying any noises here. Okay, so actually, if we should just start with the Q&A session now, a few people have sent in some questions, so I think we'll start with them. And for all of you that are here now, just type in the questions in the chat and we'll just take them along the way. So the first question is in regard to your education, and will be, what role did art play in helping you to do what you do, and should art be included in the STEM education?
Sure. Art. So in terms of art, when I was younger, I was a very adamant drawer, sketcher, doodler, as some would say. In terms of like the drawing arts, in terms of the musical arts, I'm a percussionist. I played drums for a number of years. I actually got a scholarship to go to high school and play in their band. I didn't accept it, but I did get the scholarship. So I'm involved in the arts and things like that. That helped me to be more well-rounded, I'd say. In some cases, it was kind of an outlet when I needed to, when I had a lot of schoolwork, or when I just had a lot to do in general. I'd doodle something or I'd draw something. In terms of engineering specifically, the art helps immensely. You have 3D modeling and things like that are first designed on a computer, and that really takes a special person's brain in terms of imagining something in 3 dimensions. So anyone can just draw a phone flat as it is, but it takes a certain person to be able to imagine it in 3 dimensions and imagine that it's beveled on one side and things like that. So art in that regard has helped me a ton. I know in terms of James Webb, I always like to bring this up when people ask about arts. James Webb, if you look at James Webb, I don't know how else to say it besides it's literally a beautiful satellite. If you look at just the they're gold plated on the front. And if you just look at the satellite as a whole, it's a really pretty satellite to look at. In terms of like other satellites I've looked at, and I've looked at a bunch that are just like rectangles. Like it's a really pretty satellite to look like. So I definitely think that the arts plays a role in STEM. It helps you be well-rounded, helps in a number of things. And you can kind of see the undertone of it throughout the skills that you need to be specifically a mechanical engineer, I'd say. But I know a number of other fields that kind of rely on the arts a little bit to be what they are, I'd say. Hopefully that answers the question.
I think it did. And there is actually kind of a follow-up with the whole STEM education here. And the question is, as a champion of early exposure to and engagement in STEM, what should be the earliest age for learning about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and why?
Oh, earliest age.
Now you have one coming up. Is it as soon as he or she is out, or?
You're right. It's first day in the hospital. So I think I don't know a specific age. I will speak to that question in terms of early education or early exposure to the sciences is critical, but not only early exposure, but also support. Encouragement, things of that nature. I always tell people that the real disconnect for students is that middle school age, or those upper middle school ages where math becomes more than just numbers. Now math is numbers and letters, or instead of the example I always use with sciences is now it's not Coca-Cola and Mentos and you just see it explode. Now you're doing stuff like stoichiometry. Now you're understanding, I mean, not in middle school, but you're understanding ionic bonds and things like that. And when it gets that level of complexity is when some students will become discouraged about why they want to pursue that field. And if they don't have like internship or mentor, or they haven't seen what the end goal is, they'll think, why am I going through, learning all of these difficult concepts when, other people around me aren't giving it their all. So why should I give it my all? And, you're very impressionable as a child, I'll say so, or as a younger student. So top level question, I don't have a specific age, I'll say. I will say that the disconnect comes in middle school, though from research and things like that. The disconnect really comes from middle school. And I think the key to it is having a support network and or having, it doesn't have to be an end goal. Like you don't have to know you want to be a dentist when you're in the 5th grade, but being exposed to those things like that, being exposed to engineers, to mathematicians, to marine biologists, things like that.
Sounds great. So middle school, that's the middle. All right. We have a question in a kind of different subject here. It's from Jason. He asked, you mentioned the Mars rover. Do you know if flight type machines are being tested? I know the density is different from Earth, which make flight more difficult, but seems like it could be a great tool.
So I haven't done anything with rovers since 2008, 2009. The most I've been following is what I read in the news and things like that, or what I read about articles that NASA lets out. So I can't speak specifically to that from a very knowledgeable place. I'll say it's a very general public knowledge. But you're right. It would be beneficial for them to test stuff like that on Mars. I know they're revving up a lot for exploration as it pertains to the moon and things like that. And I think the stepping stones will be Moon then Mars. And as a moment of giving you guys too much information and not part of the question that you asked, I'll say that we're also working on a project called the Lunar Gateway right now. And for those of you that don't know what the Lunar Gateway is, if you know what the International Space Station is, the Lunar Gateway is essentially a project that will be the International Space Station, but near the moon instead of near the Earth. So think about it as kind of like a pit stop on your way to the moon. And that's really to help us to study activities that are near the moon as we eventually go to Mars.
All right. Thank you for that. And there's another question here. What has your greatest wow experience been in your career, except the one maybe you have mentioned a bit about? Did you really have one wow?
My greatest wow experience. Outside of James Webb, well, I'll speak to James Webb first. So there was a time on James Webb where it wasn't, so a lot of people have seen it kind of hoisted up in its normal orientation where the mirrors are kind of flat out to you. But there was a time where the satellite was actually kind of on its back. And it was on its back kind of facing up to the ceiling because we needed to work on it underneath it, obviously. And there was a time where we kind of had to hoist it off the ground. And if for anyone that knows anything about clean rooms is because of the way the air flows, the floor is always exceedingly clean. So there was a time where we would just, in our bunny suits, kind of like slide underneath the telescope and like flip over and then just like work on it kind of on our backs. And so for me, it was kind of like a really playful experience. Like, I mean, think about it. We're working on $1 billion worth of satellites, but you know, we're in there kind of, we're in there jokingly, but also, you know, very serious about the work we're doing. So a wow moment in that would be, you can see kind of the playfulness in engineers. You can see they're very passionate about what they do, but at the same time, you can see that there's a fun side to it. There's a side in that always will tap into your inner child, your inner exploration. Like, oh, what does this do? X, Y, Z. The other wow factor, I'd say, it's always amazing to see your projects launch into space. I will say that launches have been one of the most gratifying parts, other than, you know, getting data and things like that, which I rarely see the data. So I'll help assemble it, launch it, then I read about it. so I think launches would be the other wow factor for me.
All right. That was a good answer. Another question here is, what would be the dream project or role now or in a few years?
Ooh, dream role. I mean, a lot of people want this. I want to be an astronaut at some point in my career. So that's kind of what I have been working toward for a number of years. I realize that the pool of those folks are really small. And they're just amazing people in general that get selected to do stuff like this. So in terms of other goals outside of astronaut, I would say I'd love the opportunity to be kind of a project matter expert when it comes to integration, fabrication, things of that nature. And that's something I'm working toward today. Like I really admire all the advice that my mentors have gave me. And I can speak on this. One of my mentors, Captain Kenneth Reitler. He's a former astronaut. Now he's a professor at the Naval Academy. He always told me to be T-shaped, which is basically just very broad, but very knowledgeable in one specific topic or one area that you want to be known for. So I'm trying to be very, very knowledgeable in integration, very knowledgeable in that fabrication process, things like that. So goal is astronaut, but I'm working toward being project matter expert, kind of like a project manager, things of that nature.
All right. Actually, the next question kind of follow-ups on something you just answered there. But the question is, if you got the opportunity, would you then go to space?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I would go. I mean, I would definitely go to space if given the opportunity. Like I said, it's just, it's so many brilliant people in the world, and there's so many brilliant people that want to be astronauts. It's just the likelihood of being chosen is it's far and few. So I always tell folks, you know, it's great for that to be your dream, but you know, don't get so hung up if, you know, you work your whole life to be an astronaut and you never become one. I know a number of folks that are astronauts weren't even trying to be astronauts. They were just working in their respective fields saying, hey, I really enjoy studying penguins, for example. I'm going to live in, you know, the Arctic with penguins. I say that because the most recent class of astronauts that we have, that's what one of the astronauts did. She studied penguins. And now she always wanted to be one, but again, she worked at it. And so I'd say, you know, yeah, I would go to space to answer the question.
For sure. But I think almost everyone here would like to go to space someday. It would be awesome. And the next question here is, what advice do you have for someone that would be interested in getting involved in working on space tech?
That advice would depend on the person's age. So I'll quickly step through it. The younger people, stay involved in what you're doing. Buckle down to your classes, because right in those moments you'll be learning the foundations of specifically what you'll be doing for years to come. By high schoolers and things like that, kind of the same knowledge. I mean, kind of the same advice, but I'd also say to aim and target those internships. Like, apply for every internship you can. because you'll probably get rejected from a number of them, or you might get accepted to a number of them. If you're rejected, now you have options. If you're accepted, still options. So I would say that apply those internships and get that experience, because that's really what people want to see is your experience outside of the classroom. Classroom's great, but you need outside experience as well. So don't wait until you graduate to try to have your first job be your first experience. For those folks that are already out of college and might have a little experience, might have no experience, target those early engineering jobs that are looking for someone that's just really dedicated and ready to get in there and learn. And, throughout the process, just try to pick an opportunity that matches kind of your degree or your skill set, so that the learning curve when you get in there is relatively low. And then for my more seasoned professionals, you guys kind of know how to navigate the waters, navigate the field. But let's say that you're jumping from a different field into space. A number of things nowadays actually relate back to space entirely. So, if you're an electrical engineer, that relates to space. If you are a marine biologist, just your ability to research and things like that can apply to planetary science and how we research things. Or you can apply directly to, a series of weather satellites that studies, either climate change or ocean conditions and things like that. Like there are different ways. You just kind of have to find your niche and find where your experience most applies. And more important than anything, find a position that allows you to grow in it. Don't strictly pick a position because they pay a lot. Don't strictly pick a position because it's a 5-minute commute from your house. You just have to make that decision for yourself personally and then move forward in that regard.
All right. Then we have a question from Charisma here. I'm a physics major with concentration in astrophysics. As an engineer on the James Webb Telescope, what will be your role in analyzing post-Hubble data acquired from radiation from the earliest galaxies?
So I gotta scroll over to see Charisma's face during this. Charisma is actually one of my mentees, and I love her very much. I love her very much.
There's a few questions from her.
Yeah. So in terms of studying post data from Hubble, Hubble and James Webb, we as the engineers on the side of it, we build it, we send it up, we monitor it as it's being deployed and things like that. When it comes to the data, that's when we flip to the scientists, and the scientists then kind of tell us what they're seeing, and from those same scientists are where you get those images. So those images that Hubble has produced, it'll go through the same process through the graphics, so scientists pass to the graphic folks, who then pass it back to the public to say, hey, check this out. And that's kind of the flow of how it happens. So engineers are kind of disconnected from that, and that's why we have the scientific team to do those kind of things. But all in all, it still holds a close place in our heart, because we can say, I built that, or I had a hand in building XYZ. So that it was the same way for Hubble, and now that's kind of how it translates to James Webb as well.
All right. Next question here. It's kind of fun. Aliens, yes or no? It's from Christian.
You're gonna get me disconnected from this thing again. I would say no. I'm gonna say no. It'll get me disconnected.
All right. So, and there's another question here. What role will satellites play to colonize Mars or other planet? And the question is from Ross.
Ooh, in terms of colonization, I'll take a step back. Satellites, or because I can read it here, satellites play to colonize Mars. Satellites will do a lot in terms of studying Mars. There's a number of studies that have to take place before we are ready to colonize Mars, regardless of what you hear from different billionaires in the world. There's a number of studies that have to be done before we are comfortable colonizing Mars. And my opinion, again, this is my opinion, it doesn't reflect NASA's opinion as a whole. We have to understand how to live in space before you send someone a lot further and out of reach and something goes wrong. So that's why we want to use the moon as kind of a sandbox to understand, how to live off planet before we go even further and try to live off planet. So satellites will do a lot of the there'll be different, again, there'll be different rovers and stuff that will go to, for us to understand the harsh environment of Mars before we actually put boots on Mars. Now, I do believe that will come in the next generation. I do believe I'll be alive to see that. But there is a number of, in my opinion, there's a number of research that has to be done in order to do it. So the part satellites play are the research component of it.
All right. The next question here is also from Charisma. How would you describe the collaboration of various NASA centers in regard to any mission?
I'd say they collaborate well. Depending on the mission, I know, like I said, for James Webb, for example, the Goddard facility collaborated with the Johnson facility well, because Johnson had the thermal chamber Johnson had the only thermal chamber that was big enough to fit James Webb. And then, for a number of other missions, sometimes different components will be built in different NASA centers, as well as different third-party vendors. So, Raytheon, Boeing, Aerospace Corporation, Northrop Grumman, those different folks will have the opportunity, or those different organizations will have the opportunity to build different components of the satellites, which will then be combined in one location before it's shipped off to be launched. So I think the collaboration between them is really good across the field. And even more interesting is that NASA doesn't only communicate with other NASA centers; they also communicate with other agencies around the globe. So, like I said, GPM was a combined effort with Japan, and James Webb is actually a combined effort with the European Space Agency. So I think they collaborate well, even on an international scale.
All right, thank you. Next question is, how is the work culture at NASA?
Oh, work culture is amazing at NASA. I mean, I haven't been there in a few months, but it's very friendly. It's a very friendly work environment. There are so many people there that are just willing to help you develop your career, help you answer questions that you have. Even folks that will allow you to build a satellite out of tungsten and then tell you it's wrong and why it's wrong. And again, it's not like a matter of just proving that person wrong, but it's a matter of them learning as much as they can. And it's really a culture that fosters knowledge. And again, in certain instances, you can see how each of them has kind of this childlike wonder when it comes to exploration, and you can see the reason behind why they're doing what they're doing.
Thank you. There's another question here. What programming languages are used to develop software for satellites? If you know, I don't know.
Yeah. So that varies. It varies from project to project, I'd say. But I will say that for the project I'm working on now, we utilized Python a lot. In the previous project, we used C++ a lot. There was a time where probably no one knows this language, but Stol and C-Stol was used a lot. What else? We use XML. Oh, that's not really a programming language, but XML files. Those are the kind of ones that we've typically used. So I will say that computer engineers, computer scientists are constantly needed at NASA and constantly needed within the space field, because as we just continue to move toward exploration and development, there's no lack of coding that goes into these things. So I would say there's a constant need for them. Of course, that wasn't asked, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
All right, and now next question here. Because there's a growing geospatial, I don't know if I pronounce that correct, but hopefully, and location technology hub in St. Louis, how do you see the use of satellites for GPS? Yeah.
It's a good question. The use, I mean, I don't know if the use for these will change at all. I know, like we said, there's a growing geospatial and location technology hubs in St. Louis, but I think in terms of the utilization of satellites for GPS, I think that network would only grow. I think, and I don't know if I can be quoted on this, but I think the GPS satellite network is one of the second or third most expensive space programs to ever go up, following the space shuttle or the American space shuttle program. I think the GPS program was billions of dollars, and that's something that's constantly improving because, again, it's a global network. And I see the follow-up question about AI and machine learning for satellites. AI is definitely going to be something that continues to evolve over the years. I am interested to find out how it directly can tie into GPS. I don't know that in particular because I don't really study AI a lot. But I do see the need for it. I do see the niche for it. And I'm interested to see how it's going to unfold in the coming years, in my opinion.
All right. Another question here, it's also in regards to colonization. In your opinion, how will a colonization on another planet look like?
Ooh. I believe it's going to be a very, and this sounds like a movie, but it's going to be a very specific set of people with a specific set of skills. Sounds like I'm forming the Avengers, but it's going to be people with specific talents that can operate off-world and almost independent from civilization on Earth. So, you'll have, this is just an example, but you'll have people that are really good in mechanical work. You'll have people that are really good in fixing stuff and building things. You'll have people that are really good in growing things like botanists and things like that. And you'll just have a number of people that are really, really good at what they do and can operate independently, but need to work together in order for anything to really happen. So I'd say the colonization would look like a very specific set of folks. There's only a certain amount of folks that you can send off planet because of weight restrictions, because of the cost it would take, because of vehicles that are available to us now. So I'd say it probably looks something like a very small subset of folks.
All right, thank you. And another question here is, how is air traffic managed with all the satellites in space, especially with all the new ones being added by SpaceX recently? That's
a longer question, I'll say. There are a number of people around the world that are trying to tackle the problem of cluttered orbits, cluttered spaces in space. There's a number of people that are targeting these things, but no one country takes the lead on it, or no one country takes the blame for it, I'll say, because it's an international thing. And because of that, that's kind of a situation that's been going on for a number of years. We talk about this in a number of other conferences, a number of other forums, the Space Generation Fusion Forum, the International Astronautical Forum, things like that. Like, this is a constant topic that's brought up, and how to solve this. There's a number of articles out there that identify different folks that are actually targeting and trying to do something about it. But how do we manage it? You try to find a good spot. In all honesty, you have monitoring that kind of lets you know, hey, a satellite is on track to hit your satellite. You need to use this amount of thrust to push it out the way. And typically those threat detections come within 48 hours. So you typically have, or 72 hours. So you typically have like 2 or 3 days based on trajectory to tell whether or not your satellite is in danger of being hit. And there are whole teams that's their job. Their job is to make sure my satellite doesn't get hit. So I would say cleaning it up, a bigger concern, lots of articles out there about it. But hopefully this is something we find out in the next decade or so.
Cool. And another question here. What about practice of cross-review computations, technical solutions? It's the last question.
Wow. Let's see. Cross-review. of computations, technical solutions. As it relates to satellites, I think in order to answer the question, I would say, do you mean more ground level, or do you mean more orbital in terms of the question? I guess I can technically answer both if you don't want to specify. I can relate more to the ground level. I can relate to both because I've also worked on a team that flies satellites. But in terms of ground level, it's basically just the how do I say? It's similar to other cross review situations. Like, there's a level of risk you have to consider with everything. There's a hierarchy in terms of how you go through the different phases of decision making while it's here on Earth. And it's a lot less rushed than when you're actually on orbit. When you're on orbit, sometimes based on what you're doing, it's not split-second decisions, but sometimes it's like a decision you have to make within 15, 30 minutes, an hour, things like that. And that's typically because your satellite will or will not be within command range, or it might go into an eclipse, which basically means that commands can't reach it because the moon might be blocking it, for example, or something might be blocking it. You might be blocking your signal from it, or it might be on the other side of the Earth, not near your ground station, so you can't relate to it. So I guess to answer your question, I would say it's a lot more stressful when it's off planet than when it is on planet. And that was a good question. I wasn't prepared for that one, I'll be honest with you.
It was from Andrew. Okay, I think we will take the last question here, which is also a funny ending. So, what is the most science fiction thought you've had that you wish come true?
Say it one more time for me.
So, what is the most science fiction-nated thought you have had that you wish come true?
I mean, I am a big fan of Star Wars. So I would say that being able to just come and go on and off planet as you please would always be something that I felt was possible in some future down the line, not in my lifetime, but just the ability to come and go, just to land a spacecraft on a planet like it's a car. And then say, oh, I'm going off to Jupiter, I'll be back in 3 days. Or, I mean, you saying I'm going to Jupiter and it take you 30 minutes, like you're driving down the interstate. I always thought that would be really great to experience. I mean, it's not really possible now, but because of the laws of physics, but I'm hoping in the future some way somehow someone figures it out, and that would be amazing. I don't think it's gonna happen in my lifetime, but it's always cool to think that it could happen.